Let us execute an immediate, sweeping analytical vector shift away from mid-century boarding house espionage loops, weaponized female solidarity frameworks, and the McCarthy-era political executioner networks of historical dramas, and plunge straight into the high-octane, calculation-heavy tracking grids of contemporary high-density residential surveillance loops, weaponized peephole proximity traps, and the fiercely protective, dangerously fragile world of an isolated tenant asset running a raw tactical survival loop. We are crossing the threshold directly into the hyper-monitored, paranoia-slicked parameters of a modern urban apartment complex, exploring the lethal analytical parameters of an intense, trust-shattering deception matrix with the apartment across the hall. The exceptional, pulse-pounding psychological thriller masterpiece engineered by the absolute, undisputed sovereign of suffocating neighborhood voyeurism, dark corridor isolation games, and high-velocity urban dread, Jack Dane. This high-stakes narrative tracking sequence delivers an exceptional look at an operational crossroads where a fierce, deeply traumatized primary female asset running an unyielding safety loop, a calculating, unseen predatory observer asset running a high-stakes proximity tracking and structural containment routine, and an absolute defense against an encroaching historical threat network collide at terminal velocity. Let us map the strategic narrative grid. If you are an elite enthusiast of high-octane, slow-burn psychological thrillers where an endangered, hyper-observant female protagonist must navigate an absolute maze of rigged building access logs, corrupt security guard alliances, and a deadly ring of active psychological frame-ups while running a blind survival loop inside a completely compromised residential ecosystem, where an analytical mind uses deep behavioral profiling, calculated door bolt boundaries, and absolute emotional stamina to outmaneuver an invisible predatory executioner asset living just inches away, and where the author utilizes an incandescent, reclusive woman becomes obsessed with the charming new neighbor moving in across the hallway, only to discover his unit hides a lethal clandestine operation, and he is actively monitoring her every move diagnostic routine to test our hero's structural limits. This book is engineered to lock you in. Dane completely dominates the high-precision apartment captivity meets suffocating peephole paranoia puzzles dynamic, capturing the heart-racing intellectual momentum, suffocating domestic paranoia, and heavy deductive depth popularized by genre varkics like Gillian Flynn, Frida McFadden, Alex Michaelides, and Joy Fielding, while treating realistic urban lockdown logistics, complex localized perspective alignment arcs, and protective high-density psychological extraction grids with absolute technical mastery. The narrative tracking grid zeroes in on the highly volatile, calculation-heavy baseline of our central legendary powerhouse asset, operating under a severe calculation-heavy handicap of agoraphobic trauma confinement, intensive emotional depletion, and a hyper-visible targeting canvas within a high-density building's geographical database. Behind her rigorous indoor tracking footprints, defensive structural reinforcement logs, and sharp observation metrics lies an intricate matrix of hidden personal resilience, deeply buried past timeline secrets, and sharp, high-stakes tactical maneuvers. Her collective defense mechanisms are locked down tight following a catastrophic life disruption, her entire analytical focus strictly consumed by monitoring sudden threat vectors from an encroaching hallway perimeter, parsing complex behavioral shifts from a deeply unsettling building superintendent, and shielding her vulnerable personal sovereignty node from being entirely wiped out by a ruthless elite cleanup offensive. The spark ignites when an unexpected high-frequency structural anomaly breaches her active scanning perimeter. A charming, highly polished male asset moves into the long vacant residential unit directly across the corridor. While her initial close-quarter sweeps register a standard friendly neighbor introduction sequence, she quickly uncovers a series of alarming forensic and digital data anomalies, unexplained midnight footprint traffic, a hidden surveillance array intercepting her private wireless network, and a terrifying link to a series of high-profile missing persons folders in the city database. Behind the newcomer's impeccable civilian facade and flawless social algorithm lies an intricate matrix of systematic stalking, an active history of targeted tenant liquidations, and a cold, calculation-heavy target containment blueprint. As the hostile adversarial execution phases enter an increasingly lethal terminal tier across a single building ticking clock timeline, the data mining reveals that her selection for this specific floor was an engineered trap. The standard boundaries of routine high-rise property safety and peaceful civilian privacy protocols crumble, and our central protagonist run completely out of standard diplomatic escape vectors. She is thrust directly into an active invisible war across a 3-foot hallway, where a highly manipulative neighbor masking his true tracking coordinates launches aggressive countermeasures to permanently suppress her survival data stream.
The tactical parameters instantly explode as their historical and survival warfare turns completely active, transforming the narrow concrete corridors, dark elevator banks, and private fortified residential rooms into a volatile psychological pressure cooker and a physical battle zone. Our protective, hyper-vigilant heroine is forced to deploy her massive intuitive tradecraft, elite behavioral mapping skills, and raw physical stamina to preserve her focus before her adversary's relentless, calculation-heavy proximity containment phase permanently deletes her boundaries. The threat vector remains purposeful and resolute, determined to deploy deep digital isolation loops, continuous psychological gaslighting, and persistent dominance to shatter her defense, only to realize her hardened survival protocols and shifting counter-narratives match their opponent's raw tactical speed step for step. Every midnight archival excavation of hidden building maintenance tunnels, every silent choice to stand off against an encroaching adversary behind standard architectural barriers, and every intense moment of channeling raw, unyielding survival mechanics chips away at her reliance on original peaceful rules. What follows is an exceptional high-stakes war of perspective, tactical position, and raw human grit. We watch the urban elite's deceptive perimeters completely unwrapped as Jack Dane reveals that the true victory requires more than just surviving an initial unit breach or managing a difficult personal disclosure. It demands an absolute, uncompromising defense of individual dignity, personal truth, and systemic survival against a cold, calculating machine of domestic manipulation and psychopathic supremacy. While our central characters smooth over each other's psychological and defensive blind spots with devastating analytical force, creating a fiercely protective, absolute web of dark possessive loyalty around their shared floorboard perimeter, a brutal series of close-quarters tactical confrontations and high-stakes evidentiary breakthroughs shifts the clock into its terminal phase, proving that historical emotional hazards have tracked them to their final outpost. To survive the impending locked grid trap and permanently secure her sanctuary, our resilient heroine must unleash an absolute, unyielding defense of her final boundary lines. It is a psychological thriller, urban voyeurism noir, apartment captivity mystery, high-velocity urban dread masterpiece that treats deep relational logistics and intense structural friction with elite precision. The tension here burns with a sharp, calculation-heavy intensity. We are talking about that high-frequency, one uncovered surveillance feed triggers a fatal hallway confrontation energy, where a sudden pause during an active franchise tactical briefing, an unexpected shift in an adversary's protective physical posture during a high-stakes standoff confrontation, or a heavy, possessive realization that an elite intelligence operative has completely mapped your personal coordinates, carries massive structural weight. Dane writes with an exceptionally fresh, vivid, and beautifully blunt voice, perfectly capturing the heavy, oppressive atmosphere of a private executive vault before a major corporate takeover, and the distinct subtle scent of polished mahogany, sterile hallway disinfectant, cold industrial steel, damp plaster dust, dynamic adrenaline, and pure, unadulterated suspense. What truly elevates this contemporary standalone marvel into elite territory is the author's unmatched ability to balance complex, high-stakes relationship dynamics and genuine protective power tradecraft alongside a breathtaking narrative pace and deep emotional hooks. Our protagonists don't rely on unbelievable, superficial Hollywood superhero action tropes. Their immense situational intelligence, strategic patience, and profound survival instincts match the complexity of the chaotic modern corporate and high society underworld they dominate step for step, making their choices to risk everything feel profoundly authentic and deeply gripping. The pacing moves with calculated momentum, tracking intense conversational standoffs and breathtaking tactical breakthroughs before ratcheting up to an absolute, jaw-dropping conclusion that delivers total, hard-earned advancement to their horizon. The apartment across the hall is the definitive pro-level upgrade your high-stakes contemporary thriller and intense asset suspense library demands right now. It is elegant, immensely fast-paced, and utterly unputdownable. It proves that when your entire sanctuary is targeted by a cold, calculating institutional monster, the most revolutionary play you can execute is to lock your perimeters, trust your elite survival training, and fight like hell alongside your network to rewrite the data. So, secure your personal reading sanctuary, review your emotional defensive perimeters, open your Kindle, and prepare to track them.